Hola, hola, hola. Hello, 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 my beautiful planner babe divas. Welcome back to the channel. It's your girl here, Daniela, La Planning Diva. Thank you so much for stopping by and spending some time with me here today. I really appreciate it. And hi, hello, welcome to any new fresh faces that are just clicking on my videos for the very first time. Welcome here on my channel, La Planning Diva. We have lots of planner fun. We set goals, we work towards those goals, we dream big, and of course we channel our inner planner diva as we do so. And Merry Vlogmas, day 24. Woo woo! We are definitely making our way through Vlogmas or Planmas this year. Oh my goodness. I feel like I haven't done a single vlog in this entire series, which I was shocked about. Last year I did so many more vlogs, and this year I've done just planner videos and, planner adjacent videos. And yeah, no vlogs. So maybe next year I'm just going to call this Planmas. But shout out to my girl, the Archer Soul, for leaving a recommendation to do a video on my favorite tarot and oracle decks. And so that's what I'm doing today. Very excited about this. I hope to share more about tarot and oracle decks in 2025 as part of my grimoire series. And so what a way to kick it off by sharing some of my favorite tarot and oracle decks in my collection. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing 7 oracle/tarot decks that I regularly use in my practice. I actually have quite a bit of a collection when it comes to decks. I think I have about 21 decks right now, and I'm surprised I don't have more because I have been collecting them for years and years and years. And I don't bring a deck into my life lightly. Like, I really have to feel connected to it to bring it into my collection. So I'm sitting at about 21 decks right now. I love them all. Some I haven't worked with as much as others. Some are a little bit more recent. So that's one of the main reasons why they haven't made it into this top 7 batch. Honestly, these decks, some of them are some of my oldest decks. And so I think that's another reason why I love them so much. I just have a stronger relationship with some of these decks. So a little bit about tarot and oracle decks. If you don't know what tarot and oracle decks are, they're essentially a pack of cards that are associated with different concepts and themes. I don't really want to go super into depth about the differences and what each one is and such, but suffice to say that there are 2 different types of decks. There's your traditional tarot, and then there are oracle decks. So tarot follows a very standard format. Sometimes decks will play around a little bit with that format, but essentially tarot decks follow a very standard 78 card deck style. And it's a very structured type of format where there are very particular types of cards in tarot, whereas an oracle deck is very much free form. So this is an example of an oracle deck, and oracle decks differ widely in the themes, the concepts, the card number, the card style. So oracle decks are essentially just a pack of cards, each card associated with a concept, and there really isn't a structure to this, whereas tarot decks have a very structured format with a certain number of cards and certain concepts on the cards. Although again, some tarot decks play around a little bit with, the number or the names of the cards or how they interpret the cards, but they largely follow that structured format. I hope that makes sense. I'm assuming if you're clicking on this video, you know a little bit about tarot and oracle decks. And how I use tarot and oracle decks, I use them as part of my spiritual practice, and I largely use them for advice. I use them to try to gain clarity. I use them to channel my higher self. I use them to help me choose a path that is right for me and right for my spiritual journey. I think the best way I've ever heard tarot and oracle decks described is that they are mirrors to your soul, and that's how I essentially feel like I use them. I do think that all the answers that we contain are actually held within us and in our soul, and we know the answers that we seek. But the tarot and the oracle decks are like a mirror that allows us to really channel our higher self and see what we know the answer is reflected back at us. A lot of people think that decks like these help you see the future. And I do think that there is a little bit of that there. Like, I think these decks can be used to do that. Although, like many things in the spiritual world, it's not a very straightforward path to access the future. I have pushed some decks hard to get a little bit more insight and clarity into future events. And a lot of the times, it's a lot of work to do that. Personally, I find that the future is oftentimes not really the answer that we really need to access our higher self and to channel our inner self. Sometimes I'm feeling a little bit bullheaded though, and I really, really, really want to know. And so I really push a deck far to help me get a glimpse into what might happen. And oftentimes decks, of course, they will work with you, but they will put you through your paces. And so I really have to work hard to get to, that answer of what will happen in the future. I have to do a lot of learning and a lot of spiritual work to get there, though. And so I do think it is possible to peer a little bit into the future, but a lot of the times I don't do it because I don't think it's what I essentially need. Most of the time, I'm struggling with something in the present, or I just want advice for the present situation. And that's mainly how I use my decks. Although every New Year's, I do a 13 card spread, which represents the year and every month in the year. And each card represents like what is going to happen in that month. And so that is a little bit of peering into the future. I think I'll share that on my channel this year, like my 13 card spread. Okay, without further ado, let's get into my decks. So let's start off with this baby right here. This is probably my most used deck, my favorite deck, and one that I have an intense relationship with. This is my Santa Muerte tarot deck, and it is one of the oldest decks in my collection. This is a deck I got in Arizona, in Phoenix, actually. And I love this deck quite a bit. So the cards are beautiful. It comes with a little guidebook as well. The cards are beautiful and they're well loved and well used. The art is gorgeous. It's all Santa Muerte themed. And in case you don't know what La Santa Muerte is, she is essentially the saint of death. And she's much more celebrated, I think, in Mexican culture. The origin of her story really starts with pre-colonial times. So back before the conquest, in the indigenous societies of the Americas, like the Aztecs, the Natw, there was always a worship surrounding the goddess of death. And upon assimilation of the cultures of Christianity and the Spanish culture and the indigenous cultures of the Americas, there became a mixture of, the goddess of death and Christianity. And so out of that became the idea of the Santa Muerte. So she was kind of like a Christian fusion of this goddess of death that came from before the conquest. And honestly, my relationship to La Santa Muerte is just beginning, I would say. Even though I've had this deck for years and years and years, and I do feel very protected by her and I feel an intimate relationship with her, I haven't studied her that much. I know only like the surface level of her and her practice. And I think this deck is one of the decks that looks the scariest in my collection. And honestly, I understand why. Death is always something that scares people. And the fact that she's always represented as a skeleton woman is, I think, also relatively scary to some people. And she definitely is a little bit scary if you just see her just like that. So interesting story. When I first brought this deck into my house, I actually had a dream about her. Like a day or two after I got this deck and I brought it into my house, she actually appeared to me in a dream, and she was very scary looking in my dream, and it was a very interesting, intense dream. I actually asked her not to be super scary because she was scaring me, and she actually ended up showing up in my dreams later on as a grandma figure. And I think it's because she does care about me. She cares about everyone. She's a very caring figure. I think that's a big misconception about the Santa Muerte. Like, yes, she looks scary, but she's actually a very caring figure. And so she shows up as a grandma in my dreams now because she listened to me. She cared about me. She listened to me, and she doesn't want to scare me. And so she shows up as a grandma when she shows up. She doesn't show up in my dreams very often, just a few times. And I think that's one of the reasons why I am really drawn to the Santa Muerte, is that she's a very caring, loving spirit. She's actually the patron saint of populations that are very vulnerable in society. So she's often seen as the patron saint of prostitutes, criminals, people who are like at their lowest point in their life, or in a very hard and like in a position in life where they're just open to a lot of ostracization from society. And so I really, really like that about her. She's also seen as a patron saint of the LGBTQ community, because again, she stands up for those who are the most vulnerable. But yes, I don't want this video to be super long, so I guess I'll just leave it at that. This is the Santa Muerte tarot deck, and my cards are definitely well worn. Like, how many times I've shuffled them. They're like kind of peeling at the edges here. And yeah, I would say that whenever I do, card readings from this deck, Santa Muerte is always very honest, very real with me, but also very caring, very kind. And I think this deck works the best with me in that, like, it communicates very well with me. I understand the messaging from this deck very well. There's some other decks here that are a little bit more obscure. It's hard for me to really pull out the message sometimes from some of these decks. Well, not these that I have here, because again, these are the ones that I've worked with the most, I'm the most familiar with, but there are some decks in my collection, probably more because I haven't used them as much, that takes me a little bit to understand what it's trying to say. But this deck always really works with me. This is my go-to deck. This is the deck I use for my 13 card spread every year to start off the new year. But yes, the Santa Muerte tarot deck. Love this one. Okay, deck number 2. We're gonna go with this one here. This is also one of the oldest decks in my collection, and I actually got the Santa Muerte deck at the same time I got this deck. These were the first 2 decks in my collection, and so this one is also another deck that I have used quite a bit, and it's worked with me really, really well. This is the Natw Animal Oracle deck. So this is actually an oracle deck, not a tarot deck. This is the book that came with the deck. And this is essentially an Aztec animal deck. It is, let's see, I think it's 48 cards. And I love this one because it's very cultural to me. I'm Latina, so these like more Latino inspired decks resonate a lot more with me. And it's animal based, which I've always been an animal lover, and I definitely feel like I have animal spirit guides, so this really resonates with me. We also have Aztec gods in here as well, so it's a mix of deities and animals. And so for each card, each card is represented by an animal. So we have monkey here, deer, quetzal, owl, quail, and raven, ocelot, itzli, the divine stone. This is an example of a deity card. This is another deck that communicates really well with me. I understand the messaging, and it is a deck that is incredibly inspirational, it's motivational, but it's also very real. Like, it tells you what you need to hear, even if it might not be the easiest message to swallow. This is another deck that I do like a New Year's Day spread with. I do this 11 card pyramid spread every year. So maybe I'll share that as well on my channel. You know what's very interesting about some of these decks is that I have used them dozens of times at this point. And there are some cards I still have never drawn. Can you believe that? I find that so very interesting. There's cards in this deck that I've drawn 10, 15, 20 times, and there's cards I have never drawn at all. And I think, again, that goes to show like how these decks really tell you what you need to hear. I've definitely had to work on some things over and over and over again, and there are just some things that I don't need to work on, so I never draw those cards. But I love the art on these cards. It's gorgeous. It's very Aztec. I love it so much. And what I like about the book as well, the accompanying book, is that it gives you a little bit of information about how the animal was perceived in Aztec culture, and then it tells you a little bit about the meaning of that card. So that is the Natw Animal Oracle. And I actually got rid of a lot of the boxes that these things came in because they're really bulky at times. And so I keep some of these in these little pouches. Okay, let's talk about this one. This one is a Yogic Path by Sahara Rose, and this is another oracle card deck and guidebook. Oops. And these are beautiful cards. My goodness. The back is all foiled with this floral design, and each card represents a different concept. This is also a pretty thick deck. Let's see, how many cards are in here? And this is actually a deck inspired by the Vedas, which is an ancient religious scripture first recorded in India over 5,000 years ago. And the cards are divided into different categories like Vedic spirituality, yoga, Ayurveda, the chakras, and the deities. And this little guidebook is really nicely put together. It's pretty thick. I love when the guidebooks are really comprehensive like this. And it has a picture of the card and then the concept here. And they're, again, categorized into different concepts. So we have deities, yoga, chakras, and Ayurveda, and spirituality. And this is such an amazing deck. I feel like it is very, very gentle. There's some decks that, you know, if they need to tell you something, they won't pull any punches. They give you that kind of tough love approach, which is what I kind of get from the Santa Muerte deck. This book is a lot more gentle. It's a lot more light-handed. It's always trying to, you know, find a positive take on the situation. And so sometimes when I want a little bit more of a gentle guidance, I will reach for this deck here. And the art is just gorgeous. This is also a deck that inspires me to think holistically in terms of spirituality, physical health, emotional health, spiritual health. And so I really like that about this deck. It's really gorgeous. So let's put this deck away. A Yogic Path. I also really like decks that have to do with different cultural practices, different spiritual practices. So the fact that this is sort of, that this is inspired by the Vedas, it's inspired by yoga and Ayurveda, and the practices and traditions of India is really fascinating and beautiful to me. So we have that one. Speaking of the cultural practices of India and Hinduism, we have another deck that is very precious to me, and this is my Whispers of Ganesha Oracle deck. This is a gorgeous deck. So the back is just a image of Ganesh on a pond with lilies or lotus flowers, and this is just a gorgeous deck. Beautiful imagery of Ganesha. And we have the guidebook here as well. It's just a thin little guidebook here. This is a Blue Angel publishing company, which is a huge company in printing oracle and tarot decks. I do tend to like their stuff quite a bit. But I have always felt a little bit of a connection with Ganesh ever since I was young. And I have just started developing that relationship a few years ago when I brought this deck into my life. Now I have a little statue of him on my altar. I give him offerings, especially when I do feel his presence in my life. And Ganesh, just like that yoga deck, is very much a guide that is very kind and supportive and gentle with me. I feel very much like Ganesh is a gentle presence. I do feel like this deck, again, is very positive, very supportive. And whenever I feel like I just need a massive amount of support and gentle love, this is the deck that I reach for. What's very interesting is that Ganesh is often perceived as this remover of obstacles, this remover of barriers. And sometimes I definitely feel that energy working in my life. There's been times where there's been something that just needs to be moved to the side in my life, and then it happens, and then I know that it is Ganesh working to remove those barriers in my life. So I'm very appreciative of Ganesh, and I'm excited to continue working with him and developing my spiritual relationship with Ganesh. So we have Whispers of Lord Ganesh. Okay, let's talk about another tarot deck. This is actually one of the more recent decks in my collection, and this is the Dreamy Moons Tarot by Annie Tarasova. It comes with a little guidebook as well, and this is probably the most expensive tarot deck in my collection, and that's because it's a freaking gorgeous deck. It is absolutely beautiful. Its cards are all lined in this gold foil, and the card itself has a lot of gold foil to it, and the back is also gold foil. The back design is freaking gorgeous. I actually got these when I was visiting my sister in Salem, Massachusetts, so these are also like particularly special to me. And what I loved about these, besides the fact that they're all gold foily and shiny and sparkly, is that the design is like black and with gold overlaid on it. So it really is giving that feeling of starlight. It really feels like I'm looking at the night sky, and all the gold glitter is all the stars in the sky. And I really like how pentacles are actually crystals in this deck, which I really, really like because I love crystals. And they're just beautiful, beautiful cards. And it also has this card as well, the Self. And what's crazy is that it is a mirror card. Do you see that? That's insane. And that really like resonated with me because, again, as I've said, I feel like these cards are just mirrors to your soul, because we have all the answers that we are seeking usually inside of our hearts and our souls already. And the cards just help us to understand that and realize that and accept that. So we have the Self card, the Hanged Man, Three of Cups, Seven of Wands, Eight of Wands, Knight of Cups. So yeah, these cards are just freaking gorgeous. They are gorgeous. They're so full of gold foil. Really beautiful deck. And this is a deck that I try to keep to myself, in that I don't ever read anyone's cards from this deck. Sometimes you just want to keep some things, you know, personal and intimate and private. And a lot of these other decks I have read other people with. I've let other people touch those cards. But I have heard that it is nice to have one deck that you just keep to yourself and you don't let anyone else touch it or use it. And it's just like this deck that is completely personal and intimate to yourself. And this is that deck for me. I actually haven't used this deck as much as the other decks because, again, I bought it within the last maybe 2 years or so. Definitely within the past 3 years. And a lot of these other decks I've had for a lot longer than that. But I freaking love this deck. I also feel like it's a pretty gentle deck for me. It's very inspirational, very motivational. And I think that comes from like the celestial theme. Like I always feel like this deck is encouraging me to like broaden my perspective, think of the bigger picture, look at things from, you know, more of a comprehensive perspective, think about the future and things like that. It encourages me to like think long term, think about the future, think on grander scales. And sometimes I really do need that, because you can get caught up in like the small minutia of your life. And sometimes it's nice to have a deck or a spirit guide kind of pushing you to think broader, think deeper, think on a larger scale. So I really like this deck. Okay, this is one of my all-time favorite decks, probably one of the decks I use the most, and this is my Shamanic Medicine Oracle deck, and this is also from Blue Angel Publishing. I keep it in a little bag because I tossed the box because it was so bulky, but this is an Oracle deck, and the back cover is this beautiful like earthy toned, and it's very much focused on Shamanic Medicine, which is the name of the actual Oracle deck. So there's a lot of tools and concepts here that are drawn from practices of, you know, shamanic medicine. So we have medicine bag, rattle, feathers, dream weaver or dream catcher, lower world. And the art in this deck is just freaking gorgeous. It's beautiful. Offerings, fire, crystals. I love how earthy it is. I love how much nature is represented in this deck. And yeah, I feel like very connected to this deck. And it's a deck that's full of healing. It's focused on healing. It's focused on medicine. So whenever I need something that is more focused on healing, this is the deck that I go to. Like many of my decks, it's very gentle. It's motivational. It's inspirational. There are some decks in my collection that are a little bit more like tough love. Like they'll be stern with me. And sometimes I'm a big baby. I cannot handle a stern deck sometimes. And so I tend to gravitate towards decks that are a little bit more gentle. Although, of course, sometimes it's very necessary to have someone tell you how it is. My decks are never mean to me. They're never upset with me, but they are definitely will tell me, you know, what I need to hear. We have bones for casting, tree people, flute. I love this deck so much. Medicine wheel, gorgeous. Soul retrieval. Yeah, I love this deck. This is the deck I usually take with me traveling, especially if I'm camping or I'm hiking. The fact that it's so inspired by nature, I think is one of the reasons why I love taking it with me, especially if I'm going to like a national park or something. Okay, the last deck that I have here is another tarot deck, and this is the Journey of the Sacred Bee tarot deck, and it came in this cute little box here. These cards are also freaking gorgeous, and this is actually a deck that I got online. I purchased it online and from a small business, and so it was a little bit pricey. This is probably the second most expensive deck in my collection, and it's also beautifully done. The cards have this gorgeous blue foil on the edges here, and then the backs of the cards also have beautiful blue foil outlining the bees in this sacred geometry pattern. For a deck that's very blue, I actually really love this deck. It's bee themed, which is the whole reason why I got this. I definitely believe that honeybees are one of my spirit animals that guide me, and I have had the privilege of working with them for, you know, a very long time. And yeah, these bees are gorgeous. And yeah, these cards are gorgeous. Each card has bee imagery on it, and they're really, really beautiful, beautiful cards. I love seeing all the bees on them. There's a lot of sacred geometry in these cards as well, and a lot of abstract collage type of art, which is very different from what what I naturally gravitate towards. So it's nice to have one of these decks in my collection. There's also some information here at the bottom. They associate each card with a horoscope and a planet sign. So that's an added layer of dimension to these cards. They're really beautiful. The Empress. So this is a deck that I think really channels the spirit and energy of the honeybee, which is very industrious, and it's really like an energy that just wants to get going. So this deck will tell you like where you need to work on, what you need to work on, but it also will give you the energy boost of like, okay, this is what needs to, this is what we need to work on, but this is how we're going to do it. Like, you got this. Let's go. How can we get started? How can we resolve this? Like, that's the energy of this deck. It's very, again, like a honeybee. It wants to work. It wants you to be a busy, happy little bee, buzzing along, doing what you need to do. So I really like this deck. This is a deck that's not super gentle, but also not really tough love either. It's somewhere like a happy medium in the middle. So I do like this deck. And it came with a little guidebook, but I think I left the guidebook upstairs. And there we have it, the top 7 decks in my collection that I love the most. At some point, I'll probably do like a full Tarot Oracle deck collection review. I think that would be fun. But these are the 7 that I use the most. I usually keep these out on my altar, outside of their boxes, just lined up in a row, and I draw from them as I feel like I need to throughout the week. Sometimes I'll leave certain cards up for weeks at a time. And then sometimes I'll feel the need to do a full reading with the deck, so I'll just pull for it, do my reading, and then return it to my altar. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a little bit difficult for me to talk about these decks. I don't think I talk about them too much. And so it was hard for me to kind of put into words my relationship with these decks and my perspective on them. It's a little bit hard to articulate this kind of stuff. But I do hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know if you have any of these tarot decks, and if so, if you feel the same way that I do about any of them, I would love to know. Or let me know your favorite tarot/oracle decks in the comments. I would love to know what you are using. And with that, I hope to see you in my next video. So until then, stay safe. God bless you. Have a wonderful rest of your day and have a beautiful time with your oracle and tarot decks. And as always, happy planning. Feliz Navidad.